how to play your poker draws like a boss. Do you guys ever get confused on how to play your draws, your flush draws, your straight draws, your gut shots, your backdoors? It can get really confusing, and a lot of recreational players make big mistakes when it comes to playing their draws. Sometimes they'll overplay them, sometimes they won't play them as aggressive enough. So I'm gonna teach you in this video how to make the most of your draws. But before we get into it, let me tell you a little bit about who I am and what my story is. I'm Lexy Gavin-Mather, professional poker player and coach, and I've been in the poker industry for a long time. I'm talking like almost 2 decades now. It's crazy to think. I went to college to study law. I was gonna be a lawyer. And it was my senior year of college where I started really getting into poker. I was playing home games, hosting home games in my college house, and I really started to like poker, and I realized that I was actually starting to see some money coming in. I was playing online a lot, just small games, and I was making enough money to, buy my college friends the beer that they needed for the week, and I had extra money for food, and I really started to like this. So I wound up going to Oxford, England for a summer study, and I had a crossroads. It was a decision I had to make. Do I want to continue down this law route, or do I want to try and pursue this awesome poker dream of mine? And I am so glad that I chose the poker route, because I have experienced a level of freedom and financial stability that I never thought was possible. I've made more money than I ever could have as a lawyer, and I play a game that I love for a living, and it's absolutely amazing. Here I am in Northern California. This is my backyard in my vacation home, and poker has opened a lot of doors for me, and it can do the same for you if you let me help you. I realized that after playing poker for so many years professionally, after I started coaching, I realized that I loved helping people achieve this level of freedom and financial stability that I never knew was possible. So coaching has become a passion of mine. I do have a full course in the description box below, or you can visit LexyGavin-Mather.com. So before we get into the how to play your draws like a boss lesson, please hit the subscribe, follow all the buttons, hit a notification bell, because I am going to be doing these lesson type videos weekly. So make sure you don't miss it. So let me get into my office so that I can show you a little bit more about how to play your draws and maximize your potential with them. Let's go. Okay, now let's talk about playing our draws. You want to have kind of like a mixed strategy with your draws. For the most part, as the pre-flop aggressor, I do barrel most of my draws, so I will continuation bet with the majority of my draws. There are times where you should be checking back, but for the most part, we are going to be barreling most of our draws. So especially straight draws, we want to barrel aggressively. Oftentimes bet 3 streets if you brick out, depending on if the cards that come are good for your range. So say you open early position and you have 7-8 and the flop is 9-10 deuce, you c-bet, your opponent calls, the turn is an ace or king. Because it's a better card for you than them, I would continue betting, and I would likely bet river if I miss my straight, because depending on the run out, but more often than not I do bet 3 streets with brick straight draws. Draws with blockers, you want to fire multiple barrels. So that's kind of what I was talking about earlier. Say you have the nut flush draw blocker, and you could fire multiple barrels because you can represent the nuts or the flush or the straight, whatever it is. The story you're telling is that you have a strong hand the whole way, because when you open pre-flop and then fire flop and turn, then you're telling a story of strength. So you want to continue that story. So another example is, say you have queen of clubs, 8 of diamonds on this 7 of clubs, 6 of clubs, 2 of spades flop. I like barreling here because you have a blocker to the flush. So you have the flush draw, so you have the queen of clubs, and then you have a straight blocker, so you have the 8 of diamonds, so you block their chances of having hands like 8-9 or 5-8. So if the turn is like a 10 or a 4, you can continue barreling the turn because like I said, you're blocking their chances of having the straight, and you also could get there, right? You could go runner straight. Same thing with if there was a club turn. You can represent, because you have the queen of clubs, you block some of their flush combos, so you can even barrel them off, some pairs and even some two pairs sometimes if you fire the river. You can check call your best nut flush draws. So if I have a hand like ace, king of spades or something, and there's two spades on the board, sometimes I elect to call there and I'm not saying now, not if you're the pre-flop aggressor. If you're the pre-flop aggressor, then chances are I'm continuation betting. But say you, for some reason, flatted ace, king of spades against an early position open, and there were two spades on the flop, I would lean towards a check call there because you do have showdown value. You have overcard equity with your ace and your king. So you have, the 6 outs for the overs, plus you have the flush draw outs. I guess technically you would have 4 overcards because you have to subtract the 2 spades that count as a flush. But anyway, I digress. So my point is you have overcard equity, you have showdown value with your ace. Sometimes you're going to be winning with your ace high. So you can check call because you don't necessarily need that immediate fold equity. But I'm more inclined to check raise my weaker flush draws. So, weaker flush draws like 5, 6 of hearts on a 2 heart flop. Like if someone opens middle position and you flat the big blind and you flop, the 2 hearts with 5, 6 of hearts, then I like to check raise there more often than check call because you want that immediate fold equity because A, you only have 6 high, so you don't have any showdown value. And you also, your hand is vulnerable to overcards. So yeah, if there's higher cards on the board, then your opponents have more equity to hit their overcards. So like I said, you want that immediate fold equity. Plus your flush draw is vulnerable to other flush draws, or if the board runs out 4 cards to the flush and you only have the 6 high flush, well, you would have liked to just check raise that on the flop so that, hopefully you get your opponent to fold right away so you're not in that position on later streets. Okay, so here we have a hand. We're playing 2-5 no limit deep stack. We have ace 10 of clubs in the low jack. We are 200 big blinds effective, so we're sitting with 1K stacks. It folds to under the gun 1. Under the gun 1 raises to 15. What should we do with ace 10 of clubs? I'm going to give you guys just a second to think about these decisions. So we elect to call. It's just, we don't want to 3-bet this hand versus UTG opener. It plays fine post flop and it just makes for a better call pre-flop. So the cutoff 3-bets to 60, and the dealer, who I have labeled as a fish, cold calls the 60. UTG1 calls, so we're gonna call 2. So the flop is 8 of spades, 9 of spades, 7 of clubs. So we have flopped a backdoor flush draw and an open-ended straight draw. So UTG1 checks. What should we do? Should we check? Should we bet? What's our sizing? Take a second to think about it. There's 247 in the pot. So we decide to check. We want to check to the initial opener. I don't love a lead here. If we lead and get raised, it's awkward. So let's just check to the initial 3-better, and he's going to check. And the fish leads out for 150. UTG1 folds. And what should we do? Should we fold, call, or raise? Take a second to think about it. We decide to just call. If the fish is bluffing, let's let him keep bluffing and see what happens. We also want to be cautious because the fish cold called the 3-bet from the dealer position, so he could have all of the sets. Because we're so deep, he could be flatting pocket 7s, 8s, and 9s to a 3-bet squeeze. Let's just play it more cautiously, and the cutoff folds. The turn is an ace, so what do you do here? You think we should keep checking, or should we lead? What's our plan here? So go ahead and take a second. So again, we decide to check. We would like to obviously hit our jack or our 6 for the straight. There's always that chance that the button will check behind. We definitely picked up some nice showdown value with our ace, so if he doesn't have a set, then we often have the best hand. I mean, he could have 9-8 suited, I guess, but who knows if he's even calling that pre-flop to that $60 raise. So he decides to check behind, and the turn is now a 9 of diamonds. So we now have 2 pair. So what should we do here? Take a moment to think about it. There's 547 in the pot. We both have roughly 800 behind. We decide to check, and the dealer checks behind, and the dealer shows pocket queens. I definitely don't like leading this river. In the event the fish on the button had spades, then maybe he would bluff that on the river, in which we could hero call him with the ace. If he did have 2 pair, like 9-8, he's now improved to a boat. If he had a 10, maybe he would bluff the river. So I think checking and giving him that option is the best play. And if he had bet large, it would have been a decision for sure. But I probably would imagine we would end up calling, but it's tough. So that is a good example of a straight draw and backdoor flush draw on the flop. So let's take a look at another hand. In this hand, we're playing a 150K guarantee online event. So it looks like we have roughly 75 big blinds. We have Jack 10 of diamonds in the cutoff. So let's jump in the action. It's on us. The blinds are 100, 200. This is a pretty hand, so we're gonna be opening. So think about the sizing you would choose. So if you've watched my other lectures on bet sizing, you know that I'm an advocate for choosing a slightly smaller bet sizing in tournaments, because tournaments are more about survival and every chip matters a lot. And in tournaments, when I'm under 100 big blinds, say I'm between the 50 and 100 big blind range, I usually go somewhere between 2.5 to 2.8x. Here we decide to open up to 500. You could open up to 600 too, that's fine. But because we're only 75 BBs, I chose this slightly smaller sizing. So we get a call from the cutoff and a call from the big blind. And we're gonna see a flop of ace of clubs, 7 deuce of diamonds. So we flopped a flush draw. Big blind checks. What do we do here? There's 1,800 in the pot. Should we continue betting? Should we check? If we are gonna bet, what's our sizing? So go ahead and take a moment to think about that. In situations where it's a relatively dry texture, and considering we have 2 diamonds, it's less likely that they have diamonds, in which case this can be considered a very dry flop. Ace 7 deuce, it really doesn't get any drier. So I like to choose a smaller sizing when the board is dry. However, we are 3-handed, so anywhere between 30% to 50% pot. We get a call from the cutoff and a fold from the button. The turn is now a queen of spades, so we have turned a gut shot. We still have our flush draw. So what do we do in this situation? Do we check? Do we bet? And if so, what sizing? There's 3,300 in the pot. We have 13.75 behind. So go ahead and take a moment to think about that. I definitely like continuing the aggression here. The queen may seem like a scare card, but really it's not if you consider his range and his calling range on the flop. If he has an ace, then we're already beat. We don't really have to worry about him having ace queen, because we would imagine he would 3-bet that pre-flop. That's not always the case. Sometimes players will flat ace queen, but from my experience, I find most of the time people are 3-betting ace queen, especially offsuit, because it's a little harder to play post-flop. It's not like we have to worry about him having queen 7 or queen deuce. So the queen really doesn't change that much. I don't think that he's floating us 3-handed with a hand like king queen of clubs or something. So I think that it's a good spot to continue the aggression, especially now we've picked up some extra equity. So if we hit one of the 4 kings, we have essentially the nuts. We decide to bet 1,700 around half pot. I think that's a fine sizing, and we get a call. The river is now 5 of diamonds, so we have gotten there with the flush. So what should we do? Should we check, bet, fold? I know no one's gonna actually say open fold, that's not a thing, but go ahead and take a moment to think about it. So obviously we are going to continue betting. At this point, we kind of assume that he has some kind of ace. I don't think that he has 2 pair or anything because he didn't raise us on any street. He certainly doesn't have a set. So now it's a question of sizing. What sizing should we choose? If we bet on the larger sizing, is he gonna call with his ace? I imagine he will, but we obviously can't go too big because that's gonna price him out from calling. That's gonna make it harder for him to call with his weaker aces. So I think we should be going about 4,500 here. That sounds pretty good. And he calls, and he has ace 10 of spades. So we got lucky there. So this next hand, we have 100 big blinds. We have king 4 of diamonds in the big blind, and we're playing 2-5 no limit. So it folds to the button. The button raises to 15. The small blind folds. What should we do in this spot? Fold, call, or raise? Go ahead and think about it. If we are gonna raise, what should the sizing be? A lot of people would say either fold or call in this spot, and honestly, all 3 options are okay. Personally, I actually like 3-betting this from the big blind because the button's range is super wide when it folds to him, so he is going to be opening a lot of hands that are worse than king high. And we have nice removal with the king, so it makes it less likely that he has a hand like ace king or kings or king queen or king jack that's going to snap call if we raise. And we are suited, so it does play for a nice 3-bet. And as for sizing, normally if I were in position, I would be 3-betting this to roughly 3 times his bet, so about 45. But because we're out of position, I like to add 1 extra big blind for being out of position because we want that little bit of extra fold equity. We need to overcompensate for the fact that we're going to be out of position for the hand. So we go 50, and he calls. The flop's ace of diamonds, 5 of clubs, 7 of clubs, so we've flopped the backdoor nut flush draw and a backdoor straight draw. So what should we do here? The pot is 102. Should we check, bet? What should we do? So we decide to continue betting. Again, we didn't 3-bet this pre-flop to just check, fold, and give up like a little scaredy cat. Remember, the lecture is on playing your draws like a boss. Because we have all that nice backdoor equity, we are going to continue with this here, and we only have king high, so it would be wonderful if the dealer would just fold the flop. That's obviously what we like, but he calls, or she calls, and the turn is now a deuce of hearts. So we decided to check here. We didn't turn any extra equity. We could bluff 1 more street, but because the pot is already quite large and we 3-bet it pre-flop, the fact that we haven't turned anything, I mean, we do now have a gut shot with a 3, so that could be an argument for betting, but I think it's just fine to check give up here. So we check, and fortunately he checks back, and now we've hit a king on the river. So now what should we do? Should we put out a bet for value? Should we turn our king into a bluff? Or should we just check and hope to win on the river with our king? So take a moment. So we decide to check, and the button checks back, and we lose to ace 8 of clubs. So the button actually had a pretty nice hand on the flop and the turn. All right, let's see what we have next. So here we have a $200 tournament. We have queen jack of clubs in the big blind. We're sitting with about 44 big blinds. So an unknown random player opens UTG +2, opens to a little over a min raise. And it folds to us in the big blind. What should we do? Should we fold, call, or raise? This is a pretty easy call. It's actually a really nice big blind hand. There's no reason to 3-bet this out of position. This plays fine post flop. So we hit the gin draw. We have an open-ended royal draw. So the pot is 9,700. What should we do here? Should we check or should we lead out? What's the plan? So we decide to check to the initial aggressor. This unknown random player bets 4,500. So what should we do? Should we fold, call, or raise? So either call or raise is good here. We have only 42 big blinds, so I actually like raising, trying to get it in on the flop. So we try and apply this maximum pressure, and we're out of position, so I like taking that check raise line. If he had a hand like ace king, he might not fold, and he might be willing to get it all in against our 40 big blind stack on the flop. And we have so much equity to hit our hand that we actually want to call. So he min raises to 30K, and what should we do? Call or go all in? We go all in. This is exactly what we wanted. We wanted to get it in on the flop to realize all 5 card equity. He did have ace king, and we got there. So that is an example of a really nice combo draw. Yep, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next presentation. Okay, bye. All right, if you guys like this video and you want to learn more about how to play your draws, I do have a full course. Visit LexyGavin-Mather.com. I have a course that will transform your game, whether you're a cash player, tournament player, new to the game, a little bit more seasoned. The course is for you. So visit the description box below or visit LexyGavin-Mather.com. Again, hit the subscribe. I really appreciate it, and I love you all. Thanks for watching, and I'm gonna go enjoy the river now. All right, see you guys next time. Bye.